shape. It's important. Learn it. Love it. Listen, when you're making a shape, you go, whoa, look at me, I've made a shape. So you're planning out a build, say it's a house, and this is your shape, right? That shape's fucking awful. Okay, there, better. Better. When we're building shapes in Minecraft, we try to add some interest, right? And a freaking rectangle is not that interesting. So instead, maybe we could try that. And that's much more interesting. We could move this entire wall. That's how that would be. In a little here. Or out a little, rather, in my little example. Out a little. Say there. And then back in. And we can already see that, you know, it's starting to get like there's a little bit bigger of a shape, but we can do more, right? We can actually, in Minecraft, go diagonally. It's incredibly difficult to detail, but you can make this shape, right? So now we have this shape. It's a very interesting looking shape, right? But it's also still a rectangle. It's just a rectangle with a tumor in it. So instead of having, you know, this rectangle with this little shape on it, stop making rectangles. I thought I told you that already, you know? Let's extend this part out. And now it's not a rectangle. It's a, with something sticking out of it. It's like an L shape, except it's kind of bloated in the back. So maybe we lower this side a little.
That's all right. And once we've done that,
now we're starting to get a bit better shape after we've done that. We can extend this down. And this down. Just like that. And now we have a bit more interesting shape. This is probably too tall. Now I'm looking at it again.
I said no, keep on shining.
So now we have a little bit more interesting shape. It's maybe a little bit more reasonable, right? Size-wise. Look, notice, this is the same height as this, right? And that kind of creates the same flatness as we saw before with the rectangle. It's just like a vertical rectangle. Horizontal rectangle? Whatever. Like, it's still, like, this is still flat, right? Even though it bounces out, because this, you know, this isn't flat, you see? Because it's a little uppers stuff, right? So the top of this, the top portion is still flat. The bottom can be flat. because the bottom is going to be a floor. It's not going to be seen from outside. The top should not be flat. The front absolutely cannot be flat. Depending on where it is, the walls on the sides can be flat, and no one cares about the back. You want to be a good builder? You don't even have to worry about the back. Just worry about the front. It's the only spot where you're going to send a screenshot. No one sends screenshots from the back of their building. I promise you. So what we can do is we can say we'll move this up as a little tower. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So now we have a little bit more additional depth because we have that little cube on the top here, right? Punch this out for now. And we're starting to get a better shape. We should probably add something to this side. Now notice, and this is important, when you're taking your screenshot, you're going to be taking it from this angle, right? Because this is where the front door is going to be, you'd assume, and this is the front, right? So notice how there's this big, massive tower here, right? You are never going to see this area here, right? So what we can do is just kind of say that there's going to be, oh shit, yeah, whatever, blocking it up so that if anyone happens to look at it from this angle, they won't see much. But you don't have to really, like, play with the shape that much in this area because no one's going to see it. Now, if for whatever reason you will be able to see it from this side, you might want to, I don't know, you know, knock this forward one from that. Give it a little bit of depth. But if not, I mean, you do not need to touch it. Now let's think. We have not a square box. We have flat on the top is gone. Flat on the front is gone. We don't have to care about the back ever. Unless you look at your thing from the back often, which I don't think I've ever done. I mean, look at the back of this build. And this side we're going to cover up with a tree or something later, no one cares. This side, somewhat important. If we're looking at it from here, we are going to see this side, or it's going to be a separate building, right? Connected. So we can think, how about we, I don't know. Bay window? Maybe on this side? We could do that. We could have a little... something like that. A little bay window type area thing going on there, and that's more than enough. That's what I'm saying about, like, the sides. If you need to, because you're looking at them, give them depth. That's fine. Don't give them too much, because then it'll look weird from the front, and it won't keep that same shape you like. I really like this this kind of entrance here, having a little path with maybe like a tree here, maybe a little fence with a little yard that this bay window looks out of, right? And you need to be thinking about these things as you build. You need to be thinking, how am I going to incorporate things around the build into the build, right? And typically it's often gardens or bushery, and there always needs to be a path leading up to a build. Never, ever forget the path. So speaking of what goes around the build, we need to understand that in no circumstance ever will your build be on a flat world, like this little platform here, right? So you need to start building terrain into the build, right? Your build is not going to be on flat land. It needs to be fundamentally built into the terrain. So we can say, there's a terrain here, right? And this is why we can elevate the tower one more block from the top, because it's sitting on some land, right? Which should be fine. We don't necessarily have to increase the height of the tower, and maybe we'll go back if we decide detailing-wise that it's not important. But in the meantime, we can do some very basic ideal of terraforming. Just have this, and then we can have the land way up high here. Does not matter. I recommend building landscape into your builds 100% of the time, and it doesn't need to be like this tall, right? You don't need to do that, but you need to have a little bit of an idea where your grass is gonna go. Like, we can figure out what type of roofs we want. I'm thinking maybe this one will look really good pointy, right? Is this not centered? It's hilarious. Alright, we need to move this tower one. Otherwise the pointy, like, you could do it, I don't want you to think that you have to do odd numbers, because that's a mistake many people make. Because odd numbers are easier to work with, they assume that it looks better. But that's not necessarily true. Even numbers can sometimes be really fun to play with and give your building a lot of character, a lot of quirk, especially if you kind of combine the two. Something like this. But when we want a pointy roof, it's kind of important. Like, this is me knowing that a pointy roof is going to require a center, right? So we need to kind of figure that out, shape-wise. Definitely taller. But do we want to go all the way tall? Or just most of the way tall? This is important for scaling reasons. And it looks to me like maybe that's too tall. We can put it down one block like this, I think, pretty comfortably. And then we can just let it sit. Something like that. You can kind of see ideas of what's happening. And maybe I'll extend this out, actually. I think that would be a better idea, is just to do this. That might look better in the long run. And if, honestly, roofs are the hardest part to A, shape, and B, design in general. So don't feel too bad if at this stage your roof looks like shit, like mine does currently. So I can deny. Well, I have the news. Alright, let me just... So, this is a great way to start a build, is to find the shape. Right? And kind of just the ideas behind it, obviously. Will be something like this. So now I'm looking at this. I saw we pumped this up because of the terrain being up here. But I don't love the height difference. I think this is too much and it makes this kind of look very flat right here. Right? Do you kind of see what I mean there? Because there's no hard corners. This is a very flat part of the wall. And I think it's a little too big. I think I want to drop this too, actually. So this will be a very short floor. But it'll be fine. Because
this has quite a tall roof, right? So we can probably figure it out. Back to the left tonight. We're gonna unlock. Oh, that moves away. Now.
Man. Notification section. I don't love the shape of that roof still. I like the shape of this roof though. I think this roof will look good. We'll figure out this roof. Maybe it'll be a little different at the end. So, important recap. Number 1. Say this is your house, right? Put it 5. The front should be depth of some sort. You can, you know, depth it whatever you want. You can put things in, you can put things out, right? Don't be too scared of diagonals, right? They're harder to detail, I won't lie to you. But they can give the shape a lot more character and a lot more interest, right? Another tip, the top of your building, it needs to have some depth, right? It needs to also be kind of different heights on the height map of your build. So in this build we have the lower section and the tall tower, right? Third tip, the terrain, it needs to be in the build. There needs to be a clear plan of where the build's going to sit on the terrain. This one, it's mostly like a plains type terrain. It's pretty flat. There will be builds that are embedded in mountains, for example. There will be builds that are, like, I don't know, over a ravine, for example. So, you never really know. It kind of depends on the build. But, you know, you need to be mindful of the terrain that either you're going to put your build into, or the terrain you're going to build around your build. It needs to kind of function in that context, right? And then we have to have a path. That's part of step 3. Is know where your path is generally. The details can be fixed out later, but for the most part, you need to figure out where your path is right now. And then, lastly, for roof shapes, I mean, roofs will probably get a whole nother section, because roofs are just a pain in the fucking ass. But it is worth it to put in a kind of, like, a roof prototype, just so you can play around with the scale. Scale's very important. You don't want your roof to look too massive on your tiny house, or your massive house to have a tiny roof, right? So you need to kind of play around with the scaling between those two and figure out just exactly how tall you want something to be. That's all I have for this episode of JJ's Build School. Tune in for the next one. We'll talk about color and kind of the ideas behind picking out a color